What's going on, everyone? It's Mitch from RespectMeridian.com, back with another episode of the North American Weed Tour podcast, looking at the best in legal cannabis across the map. I got a special guest today coming out of the heartbeat of the cannabis culture, man, Jigar Patel of NorCal Cannabis Company. How you doing today, Jigar?
I am doing great. Appreciate you guys having us on today.
Awesome, man. You super appreciate you coming on here. I know we crossed paths in New York. We were talking about that briefly right before we went live on the East Coast, but we're focused on the West Coast today, man.
Before we get started, right?
Yeah, exactly. Right at the heart of the culture. And before we get too ahead of ourselves, I kick off every episode with my guest origin story around the plant being cannabis. So whether that's personal, professional, whatever you choose to be vulnerable in sharing, just curious kind of when you and cannabis began your journey together.
Yeah, man, it's funny because I started smoking cannabis really young. At that time, really opened my eyes to a world that I didn't see exist. I'm an immigrant kid, hardworking parents, came to America with a very specific plan for their kids, right? Which was get an education, go to college, get a job, have a house, have a family, and that was the dream. And I think as I was growing up in America, as this kid of immigrant parents, I was hanging out with kids from all other ethnicities and cultures. Met a lot of really cool dudes in the Chicagoland area, and obviously, as an adolescent, stumbled upon cannabis. The first few times I tried it, I wasn't really sure if it was for me, but I think I got the bug pretty quickly and immersed myself in it, and I think it did a lot for me early on, and really one of the biggest things it did for me was open my I would say my eyes and my mind to a whole world that I didn't know existed, and I think it really did transform who I am as a person and who I am today. And that initial introduction to cannabis has really influenced my entire life, starting with choosing this as a profession, in my early 20s. So, I give a lot to the plant, and I think that's why I'm so passionate about the legacy, where it comes from, and really California cannabis culture.
I love that, man. I love that. When did you start, or when did NorCal Cannabis Company kind of come into existence? What year was that?
Yeah, man. Formally, you could say like the actual holding company, really came into place, I would say, in 2018 formally, but like the companies that made up NorCal really started in the Prop 215 days and carried on and really got their actual formations like in the early 2000s as collectives, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think the move from that collective into Prop 264 and the ability to really commercialize the business is what led to the NorCal holding company origin story that we see today. But our roots trace back to some of our team members almost as far as 1996. I would say my core expertise in California 2003. But NorCal's really made up of a bunch of cultivator industry folks that have been participating in this space long before what you see in modern cannabis.
And what are the kind of current brands and product offerings that are under the umbrella?
Yeah, I mean, today when you look at who NorCal is, we're a lot different than we were, call it, 5 years ago, but eerily similar to who we were 20 years ago. And so, our core focus is indoor cultivation. We call home base Santa Rosa, California. In a lot of our eyes, we believe California and Santa Rosa in particular is the home of indoor, probably globally. If you look back to what was going on here in the late 90s and in the mid 2000s, it was really undercover, but this is where most of the indoor was actually being grown. So for us right now, we focus on three kind of flower CPG brands. Our primary brand being Lolo. We've got a lifestyle / kind of California culture brand in One Life, and then our node to legacy, which is Panacea, which is one of our VP of product here, Justin Benson, who's an old school, farmer, and I would call him, he loves this term, extract artist, one of the OGs from back in the day. So, the brands that we bring to market today are really California focused, but they're focused to different consumer segmentations, right? So, like, when we look at Panacea, we're really going after the hardcore, I would say, true California OG smoker. When we talk about Lolo, we're talking about the California consumer that's always been a smoker and is looking for great quality at a great price. And, One Life has a little fun and likes to play in that art, culture, skate crossroads.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And so it's nice having those market segmentations. And when it came to building those brands, was it stuff that kind of was successful you guys had in the market and you realized was successful, or were any of those kind of an attempt from the ground up of like, here is a customer base we know is there, let's curate kind of a product and a brand for that customer base?
I think it's a little mix of both, and it's really interesting, right? Because what we like to pride ourselves here on is obviously being from the legacy market. Is our understanding of that market and how it flowed, right? Like there's always a cyclical nature of how cannabis moved throughout the California ecosystem. And part of what you see in our brands is really the amalgamation of that, right? Like we are able to look and see what we are doing really well through all these cyclical turns in the market and what works. So when you look at a brand like Panacea, I equate it to whatever the hypest stuff we had in the old days was that we would sell in the dispensaries, right? When I look at Lolo, I look at what the power consumer would come in and want to purchase at the biggest dispensaries. And if you trace back our origins, like we were one of the main indoor providers for some of the biggest dispensaries prior to Prop 64. So when you talk about those 30 and 40 and $50 million dispensaries that were running the California game, we were one of their largest indoor providers. And through that, we were able to learn a lot and understand really what the market wanted. And then utilizing today's data and technology, we're able to create brands that actually fit that consumer market fit, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think it's that combination of experience and then leveraging the data obviously is kind of a recipe for success. And when I look at, the brands, I'm familiar with all of them, but Lolo seems to be the one that I feel like is getting the most, a lot of presence right now. And obviously, like you said, it's kind of tailored to that consumer that's been around. And I think a lot of companies in this space kind of forget that consumer, or put out products that clearly don't resonate them, whether it's at a price point or the messaging, and kind of say, how do we not win over this consumer? But being that you guys have came from this and seen the game evolve, you understand that person's there. And for that consumer, what do you think is the things that matter to them most? Kind of your typical Lolo consumer.
Yeah, that's a great question. And when you say typical Lolo consumer, it really does run the gamut of who is a Lolo consumer, right? And I think we have really identified what matters to that consumer: quality, price, and consistency. And it's not unlike the old days. Like, look, baiting and switching a consumer or a customer loses you consumers. I don't care if it's somebody buying hundreds of pounds off of you or an eighth off of you. If you sell somebody something that's branded as something, they expect to get what they pay for in that bag. And what we realized with Lolo is if we can continuously present this fresh, high quality product to a consumer at a price that they could handle, it would resonate in California, given really how mature this market is, right? We did a data segmentation study early on in the NorCal days when we were involved in other things besides just indoor cultivation. And that data told us that the power consumer doesn't care about brand today. And while they like hype, they are focused on quality, consistency, and price. And that's what Lolo is. And the beautiful part about Lolo is it really is, it's a no frills brand, right? What we're able to do and why we're able to do this, we're not some giant that's coming in and losing money bringing you flower at that price. We're able to utilize our one really good skill set, which is growing high quality indoor cannabis cheaper than anybody in the country, and then using our distribution and sales channels to get it to our consumers across California. It's pretty simple. Like, we're not over here playing a bunch of like I said, bait and switch games or losing money to do this. We're able to pass on the savings to consumers. We think it's a
Yeah.
winning formula, quite frankly. You're seeing it all over the country, right? When you read the headlines, like it's price compression, and it's not just California; it's everywhere. And the thought on board for us is, if we can win in California, which we consider the hardest market in the world, then that really does show the world what we're able to do in markets like Illinois or New Jersey or New York, or even internationally. And we think that this is what the market looks like, you know, a lot sooner than a market that looks more like, say, in Illinois, where you have really a lot of control from the big boys, right?
Absolutely. And something that's funny is like, we see these, or for me personally, I see people talking about price compression, right? And just supply and demand. We saw it, obviously, Oregon was a little bit earlier than California. So we saw it in Oregon, we saw it in Washington, we saw it in California, Oklahoma, even though they're medical, they probably dealt with it the most just due to lax regulations. But I see, the impending oversupply in Massachusetts is coming, and that obviously drives the price per pound down. But it's something like, if you've been in the legacy market, we've seen the same thing when before the shit was legal. There was floods that affected pricing, and like you said, delivering quality, pricing, and consistency are those three pillars that, whether this is medical, whether this is rec, or this completely black, this has applied to the game, and we've kind of seen those things. So what does that experience for you guys mean to see this kind of, whether it's medical or traditional legacy, whatever keyword you want to call it, but seeing this kind of before it's rec, and then watching people flounder in this rec market? Do you feel kind of prepared? Like, man, we're just seeing the legal version of what we've already seen before, or is it kind of a whole new ball game?
Well, look, it's a brand new ball game, right? Anytime you introduce, obviously, something like this industry has gone through over the last 5 years, there's a lot of different kind of quagmires that happen within that. But you are 100% right that we rely on our historical knowledge of what happens during seasons, right? When things were good 2 years ago, we looked at each other, Justin Benson and I, and we're like, oh shit, this isn't going to last. What's the downside look like? And that's why we Lolo had always been sitting there, but we didn't have a need to actually push it as much, because people were paying for either premium bulk from us or our premium brands. We couldn't keep that in stock. But we looked and saw what was happening. We saw how many grows were coming online. We saw what was happening in the market. We knew what was going to happen kind of when the COVID restrictions came up. And we, in April of 2020, when most people were digging, or not really digging, and they were really pumped about the price points that they were seeing on bulk, we took an opposite view and said, we better start putting stuff into branded flower and building a brand. And so we were able to do that basically by not overcharging for that brand and becoming more and more efficient at what we did, from getting a bulk pound into a Lolo bag and getting into the consumers on a production schedule that kept stuff really, really fresh. And I think that's one of the secrets that people don't talk about. And I think it's a dirty little secret in the game, is like, this is a perishable good. And if you want to move high volume cannabis, you need to be able to actually have a production schedule that meets the demands of your distribution network. And I'm saying these things and it falls on a lot of deaf ears, but for us, like, we've been doing this, a decade plus, and we understand how this works. We understand that if you sit on product for over a month and then you hit the market, guess what? A week in, somebody's asking you for a discount. It doesn't move in a week. Guess what? They're asking for a bigger discount, right? There's so many things in this game that the historical knowledge that came from people that actually did this have, and that is what we should be leaning into, right? Instead of complaining about all the advantages of everybody else and what money and this and that, like, forget about them. What can we do better? And I think that's what we at NorCal really pride ourselves on, is like, hey man, we've been through this. We walk around here and we joke about what the market's like right now, because we've seen it before, right? There's nobody on our crew or on our team, even in the office, that's like, we've seen this. We've had people that have never been in cannabis but have been with us in the office from 2015. So they've been in this almost 7 years. So that's 50 years in cannabis. Like, we have secretaries around here that understand, literally the cyclical nature, and are speaking the same language. It's really cool to watch this company in action from that standpoint.
Yeah, and that's that historical, whether it's data or gut instinct, intuition, whatever, life experience, right, speaks volumes in this space. And I think that's a big part of why you guys have been successful. So, for you guys, is like, revenue has made quite a big jump in 3 years. They kicked me over some figures that it raised from 2 million annually to 7 million in a course of 3 years. What were some of the leading factors to grab that level of growth?
Yeah, I mean, our original, rocket ship was pretty crazy, right? When we first started NorCal, you know, we really believed in direct to consumer. We were big proponents of that retail model. So at that time, we actually set out with our partners, Ease, at that time, who weren't plant touching. And while we were also really big in indoor cultivation, we had also become the largest delivery company, really at that time in the world, if you given the market size of California. So we had God, who knows? We were probably facilitating thousands of deliveries a day. And in doing so, um, we were really able to understand what was happening right on that consumer side, translate that to what was happening really on the flower side. And we were able to, at that time, we went from 3 million to 70 million in revenue in less than 3 years, which is pretty crazy.
Mm.
When COVID hit, we had to take a hard look at what that business line did. Um, and we left delivery. So, we basically now, as we stand, are about a $50 million flower business in California. But, you know, getting to that scale from 3 to 50 in that short span was not easy. A lot of blood, sweat, and tears. But that's a true testament, again, to, you're going to keep hearing me say it, are people. There is no one person here or one team that does it. It's really the entire NorCal team that truly understands kind of our North Star as being the most efficient indoor cultivators. Really gives us that heads up into bringing brands that matter to life. And, I think as long as we continue to do that, we'll have a place in this industry.
And following in, like you said, when the market was great and you guys were like, all right, we need to approach this with caution, right? I can't remember who it was, Warren Buffett or whatever. There's that classic line where it's like, when others are greedy, seek calmness. When everyone else is calm, that's when you need to be greedy. There's some sort of investment, I don't know, saying out there. So it seems like you guys have that kind of that gut instinct, that historical knowledge. What are some other indicators you look at for the market to feel like a shift or a change is coming beyond kind of just seeing it previously?
Well, I mean, we're constantly looking at competition in terms of what's on the market, where people look. There's a lot of very innovative people in the space, right? So you're constantly seeing where that innovation is. And what we study a lot is supply chains and really costs, like any other business. You know, while you may see a product on the shelf, if we know that product doesn't have longevity because of the way that supply chain is set up, we like to look and say, can we set up a better internal supply chain? Can we utilize our partners to set up a better supply chain? Can we bring this product to life better than somebody, and can we do it more efficiently, right? So we're constantly doing product innovation, but also when we do product innovation, it isn't just hey, I want to create this. It's really hey, is there a consumer need for this?
Hmm.
Is somebody fulfilling this in the market? If they are they touchable? Are they doing something so good that it doesn't matter for us to do it? And you should have learned that, given the last 5 years where everybody tried to do everything, right? At one point here, we had all kinds of plans, for an extraction lab. We had a rosin lab at one time. We've done all that. And what we realize is we're really good at what we do, and our partners are really good at what they do. And our unique ability to actually maintain strong partnerships with partners that are like-minded and think about the world the same way we do allows us to bring these products to market, because we don't have to have this crazy infrastructure to do it. We can partner with more efficient operators to bring products that matter to the market. So, I think that's one of the things that we do really well in terms of understanding the market. I think, we spend a lot of time understanding regulation and compliance and understanding where where the problems may arise, not only for us, but others trying to bring similar products to market. Um, and I think for us, we spend a lot of time really with what I call kind of our feedback loop between our sales and production team, where our sales team is constantly in the market talking to buyers and consumers and giving us, their finger on the pulse of what's happening. And unlike many other organizations I've seen in the cannabis space, we actually rely on that, right? Our sales guys and our field ambassadors need to have an open forum to tell us what's happening. I have a weekly meeting, right, where I want to hear what they're hearing, out in the field. And when you look at California and the size of the market, what's awesome about that and why we think this gives us a great kind of, um, you know, head start to the rest of the country is California is, you could say it's anywhere from call it 5 to 8 different states
Hmm.
on the way that they function in both buying habits from the buyers and the stores, but the consumers and the economics that drive those areas. So we get a lot of internal data just from this state that we can then apply to other regions throughout the country as we decide to move into other markets.
And on that first point, you were talking about, sticking to what you do best as an entrepreneur. And, I'm not quite sure the level of creativity that you personally hold, but obviously launching brands and being an entrepreneur, there's a creative element to that. And both being a business owner and being a creative, I feel like there's this never ending tug at like starting new things, chasing shiny objects or squirrels, right? Or getting inspired. What if we do this? What if we add that? We're plagued by not it's difficult to stay in a singular model and just stay there and not get distracted. What are some of those ways that, whether it's yourself personally or internally as a group, that you guys stay focused and not get lost in the sauce trying to chase all the new things?
I think that because we've been a victim of chasing the shiny new object, the mentality in the heads that worn here is don't chase it and focus. But what we in doing so, that was really great to like muscle through the really tough times, and I think we're doing as good a job as anyone muscling through right now. Um, but it doesn't mean you take your eye off what the prize is. This industry is still so nascent, right? There's still so much more growth. The possibilities are still endless. It's in our best interest to make sure that we are still forward thinking. Right? You can't just get caught up in what you're doing and say, "Hey, I'm the best at this, and this is all I'm going to do, and I'm never going to do anything else." I think what we've done recently is really put in a new BD team. We were able to bring Joe Andre, who used to be the CEO at Field, formerly was a VP over at Glass House, who's been kind of on the cutting edge of extracts to come lead our products team along with Justin Benson. And I think what we've done is built a really good internal BD team that both can work on products and partnerships here, that allows us to actually look at things that are outside of our core capabilities and look for things that make a lot of sense for us without having the entire team shift its focus there. So we've put some, I would say, better parameters around how we think about business development and really SKU development around here.
And what does it look like for you? I know you said looking at the market when bringing a new SKU out, it's like, is there a need? Is there a competition there? As you find SKUs that become successful, obviously other people are going to mimic that or go after, it's very rare that you're going to be the singular person going after a SKU or a gap in the marketplace. As that competition heats up, what are some of the ways that you kind of assess, hey, is this going to continue to be viable and be like stay competitive in those particular lanes?
Yeah, I mean, I think what we realize is that from the NorCal perspective, because of our efficiencies at what we do, give us so much more margin. We only look at products that we know that our competitive advantage makes sense for us to do, right? So, like, again, we're not going, the middle of the shelf doesn't make sense for us, but the top and the bottom do for a lot of really strong reasons, which are because, again, back to our efficiencies, we're able to put better product in what we would look at in the good. If you went good, better, best, you know, our goal is to always have the best good at the best price. Our goal is to always have the best better at the best price, and our goal is always have the best at the best price. You take that and you combine again what we talked about, consistency, and quality. Yeah, I think that's the winning formula. Like anything else, and we don't think brands are going to be born overnight. You're going to have to continually do this over and over again to get mind share from today's consumer. And if there's anything that we know about a cannabis consumer is they're not easily fooled, right? These are smart individuals that pride themselves on not being duped.
Absolutely. Like you said, it's once you crack open that bag, it's hard to deny it if you're a real cannabis consumer. You can, no matter what it looks like or what the hype was going after, once it's open the bag, it's going to speak for itself.
Well, and look, and I think we've sometimes got to get out of our own head, right? Like I remember, like I'm the guy that wouldn't, I wouldn't smoke I wouldn't touch anybody else's joint, or I only smoke our weed. Like I think we have to get out of this just always thinking about heady and realizing that this product, while still for the culture and still for the people that have always been a part of it, there's a lot of people that really enjoy it and want to be part of it. They want to be part of the smoking culture. They want to learn the history. They want to learn, what makes something good, what makes something quality, what should I be looking for when I do it. And I think that if we get so caught up in just only thinking about hype and not thinking about how we can bring more commercial smokers in, we're doing ourselves a disservice to the industry.
Mm. Absolutely. And when it comes to that, on that conversation of quality, right? Like there's a couple different boxes that have to be checked in most people's opinions. Which one, like bag appeal, nose, high, right? There's a couple of those. Flavor. What is you, if you have to pick one of them, you got to pick one. What's your ultimate indicator of quality for you personally?
For me personally, it's all about flavor and profile, right? Like I still smoke by rolling joints every day. Like
Mm.
that's my preferred method. Um, but I understand the consumer, right? Having done this really most of my adult life, and I'm 45, right? Like I understand why somebody's not going to want to buy a bag, why they really want to buy a bag, why they're going to overpay for this bag. And I think, again, for us is getting to a standard that everybody can appreciate so that like when you open a bag that's priced in this category, you know exactly what you're getting, right? And why it's a value. And when you go one up, what are you getting for that value? So like when we look at it, and this is really when we think of our cultivation and our house of brands, we really look at ourselves as a platform, right?
Mhm.
Where the plant really, at its essence, is the beginning of it, and we grade it into different categories. And that grade, so Lolo, while you may open up a bag of Lolo and it might exceed your expectations, you should never open up a bag and be like, man, these guys screwed me, right? Like, and I think that when you open up a bag of Lolo and then you take that to the One Life brand, you're going to see that, hey, the One Life brands, oh, there's not as many smalls in here. And again, that's not for everyone. The consumer has told us that, you know, really tiny buds, you should sell for less than medium sized buds. You
Mhm.
and I both know that if we're grinding it up, like sometimes you might want the smaller buds, right? Like,
Right.
again, like these are things that while we try and educate, we don't have control over how the consumer thinks about them today. And it's going to be a long haul to get there. But, in the meantime, what we can do is at least meet that consumer demand, and for our really high end brands, it's like we do extra things. Like we make sure they're completely hand trimmed by the right trimmers that, they've been through QC like everything else multiple times. That particular terpene profile is one that is sought after today. Like there are differentiators between each of those price points. It's just knowing that what those differentiators are and sticking to it so that your consumer can always say, this is what this product means to me.
Mhm. Um, yeah, no, I can't agree anymore. And it's definitely about meeting or exceeding consumer expectations, right? That's definitely a big part of this. With noticing, like you said, you noticed that there was kind of going to be this shift when we look at last year, the top end product. It was just seemed like no one could grow enough. That price point was crushing. I'm sure on the wholesale level, we more so look at the consumer level, but I know across multiple states, it was like the top shelf was just cleaned out of any quality everywhere. It didn't matter price. I live in Washington. We were seeing prices we'd never seen for limited batches, no problem selling out. We obviously have shifted, 2022 saw a shift from that happening to, it's still out there, exists, that top shelf consumer, I think, is still more prevalent than in years past, but obviously we're moving more to that value base. Do you think that trend continues in 2023? Is there any other shifts without giving too much, juice away for competitors? But what are some of those shifts that you might anticipate, or trends that we're going to see this next year?
Yeah, I think in the kind of post-COVID world, what you saw was a lot of what I call the better. So the middle of the indoor category was full, and you see that today, right? There's so many brands competing in the middle, and that's really a result of the amount of product that there is in the market. And like I stated earlier, I believe that the value category, as everybody else, we believe that value category is going to continue to grow, but that value consumer is going to start looking for a better value product.
Hmm.
I think what they're realizing when they find Lolo is like, holy cow, I can buy this and it's quality indoor for the price that I was paying for mediocre outdoor or mediocre greenhouse. Like, so what you're going to see is that value consumer is going to start actually looking for better and better product. I also think that you're going to start seeing really high end brands differentiate themselves because they have learned from mistakes from the past that you can't put out millions of pounds of high-end product. It doesn't exist, right? So what you better put out there is stuff that people are going to pay more for because it is that much better. For too long, people got away with putting mediocre product in fancy jars with fancy people backing it and charging more for it. It doesn't work anymore. And you're seeing those brands have to BOGO their product today. And I think the last piece that you're going to see is something we pay a lot of attention to, and I've said it a few times in the last half hour, is really speed to market, freshness. I'm sure you, like me, don't want to smoke year-old product or 2-month or 3-month-old product when you have fresh product ready to be smoked that just tastes better. So I think that you're going to see a general shift in the way products brought to market, batch sizing, all of those things. And what you'll start to see is the evolution of craft at the top, and I think commercialization in that better and good quality.
Yeah, those are some pretty good predictions that I think are pretty in line with what we're seeing. For people out there that want more information of what Jigar and team are up to, NorCal Can with 2Ns.com. Anything else you want to plug, Jigar, before I get you up out of here?
No, man, love what you guys are doing. I love that you pay attention to the folks that have been at it for a while. Keep doing what you do. We appreciate you guys still keeping it strong for the culture.
Thank you, man. Trying to report on what we see, and definitely make sure that there's a place there for those that deserve to be there. We've been doing this media thing in the music realm for a while, and that was always a big part of what we did there. And as cannabis legalized and we moved into that world, it's been a big part. Obviously we got to report on everything, whether it's mainstream, small, whatever. But we're always going to have that special place in our heart and try and provide a platform for those that have been there and those that we think continue to deserve to be there for sure.
Well, thanks for having me on, Mitch. We're happy to still be here and still fighting for NorCal and our people.
I love that, man. I love that. So people out there, like I said, NorCalCan.com, find some more information. Check out that Lolo, Panacea, One Life on shelves around California. If you guys want more information, shoot us a message. We'll tap you guys in. This is the North American Weed Tour podcast. I think we have another episode or two on Friday. I think just one more this week on Friday. So you guys stay tuned. Follow us, Spotify, Apple, anywhere you listen to podcasts. We will be back with more content.